Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about paths, which is a genuinely confusing topic. Simply stated, a path is a way that describes where one file is in relationship to another. So just to give you a concrete example, let's take a look at this folder that I've got open, and this is the www folder that I've been showing you guys since we've been talking. And inside here, you can see that I've got some folders, and I've got a file called index.html. So let's just take the simplest case. If we wanted to know what the path is for index.html, we would have to remember that we're on a particular part of the unix.uvix server, and that particular part happens to be called, in this instance, PWTA, which is this account that I'm using now. And because I know that I'm working with the web, I know that this is inside another folder called www. So that's all part of the path. Now, once I'm in that www folder and I've got all that other stuff, then I know where I can tell people where to find index because it's going to be inside that folder. So let's take a look at a slightly more complex example. In this same www folder, I've got the EXS folder, and that, as you recall, is where we save all our exercises. So I'm just going to open it up. And inside that EXS folder, you can see I've got X1, X2, and page basics. And if I open that one up, you can see in this case, I have just one file in there, and it too is called index. You remember that if I used index as the name of a file in different places, the computer is going to keep everything straight. So I don't have to worry about the duplications. The computer will know, as long as you point it to the right folder, what you're talking about. So we select it, and this is something that you find in Fetch. You may not find it in other programs, but it's going to help us. If we hold down the path icon, we can see the path to this particular file. So at the very top level, this says that it's inside page basics X, which is itself inside of EXS, which is itself inside of www, which is itself inside PWTA, the name of this account that I'm on. And then this is just kind of housekeeping that the server people have to say where your particular part of the web and the UVix site is going to be. But for our purposes, what we want to do is, remember, we want to tell when we create a URL, we want to send people first of all to webuvic.ca, and then we want to make sure that they go to the right account. In this case, it will be tilde. You have to add the tilde, PWTA. Now, again, a peculiarity of the UVix site is that we don't have to say www. In fact, if we say it explicitly, it'll throw an error. So we're just going to leave that out. So we're going to say, go to the tilde PWA account, look inside the EXS folder, look inside the page basics EX folder, and there you'll see index. So let's translate all that into a URL where we can actually get to all that stuff we've said. So here we are, HTTP. I'm just going to erase my name, default. The first thing this says is, to the browser, we want you to go to a website called webuvic.ca. And when you get to that website, look for an account called PWTA. And when you get there, even though you and I both know that we're only going to be talking about the www folder, we're not going to mention it. We're just going to simply say, go to the EXS. Whoops, I'm sorry, I've got to put that slash there. Go to the EXS folder. Look inside there. The browser's being helpful because it remembers that I've already been there. Look inside the EXS folder until you find the page basics EX folder, and look inside there and find the index.html folder. When I hit return, it'll go there. Now let's look at a slightly more complicated example. I'm just going to get rid of this for the moment. I'm going to bring in, still in Fetch, and in this instance I'm using the PW401 website, which contains lots and lots and lots of things. So I'm inside, as you can see up at the top, I'm inside the PW401 folder. And you can see I've highlighted a folder called Demos. And you can figure out what I'm going to be using that for. And if I open that up, inside there, you'll see that I've got a whole bunch of files and folders and so forth and so on. And I'm just going to come down until I come to this particular folder that I'm interested in at the moment, which is the Spry Tooltips D for demo folder. And I'm going to open that up. And inside of that folder, you're going to see something called Spry Tooltip _samples AK, just a name that's meaningful to me. And if I open that up, you can see that I've got another folder that I've called Chaucer. And if I open that up, you can see I've got a whole bunch of files in there, including an index.html. So you can see that to get to this particular folder and this particular file, it's kind of a long way. And if we look at the path, you can see that we have something very similar to what we saw, only more often. If we start at the bottom, this happens to be the name of the account. It's no longer PWTA. I'm using my own account. And it's telling me, just as we saw before, that I'm inside the www folder. And I'm not going to use that in the URL that I finally give to the browser. And inside that www folder is my PW401 folder, and inside of that is the demos folder. Inside of that is the Spry Tooltips _D folder. Inside of that is something called Spry Tooltips samples _AK, and inside of that is something called the Chaucer folder. So we've got all these folders, and inside there is something called index.html. Now there's no, unfortunately, very simple way of copying all this stuff. So you could either jot them down or memorize them, which is probably a little bit more than what you want to do. But whatever it is, if you're looking for the absolute URL to get to that particular file, you're going to have to tell the browser to go to all these various places. First of all, the computer that the server uses as its address, then the little chunk of it that is part that I've got for my own use, akeller, and so forth down the way. So each folder, if you can sort of think of it, is a kind of parent that contains children. But those children themselves can contain children and so forth down the line. And when we get finally to the youngest, if you will, the youngest child, it's kind of like a family tree where one parent's children, in effect, are represented, nested inside another, and another, and another, and another, until we get down to the particular person that we want. You can see in this case it would be a pretty complicated URL, so there are easier ways of doing it. And one of the ways to make it really easy is to use Dreamweaver to find the files for you, because once it finds the files for you, it will also remember the path, and that's something you don't have to remember. But this particular demonstration using Fetch just shows you how a file is nested inside of a folder, which itself is nested inside another folder, and so forth and so on. And as you work your way through all these things, you finally follow that path to point to the file that you're interested in showing on the web.